The warning came without ceremony. One moment, Earth's outer sensor grid showed nothing but empty space and distant stars. The next moment, a vessel materialized that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The ship was 3 kilometers long, its hull carved from what looked like polished obsidian, reflecting Earth's sun in strange, oily rainbows. Captain Lee Ji-won stood on the bridge of the Orbital Defense Station's Sentinel Prime, staring at the image on the main screen. Her coffee had gone cold in her hand. Around her, the usual chatter of the command center had died to absolute silence. 15 years. That was how long humanity had possessed faster-than-light travel. 15 years of exploring nearby stars, establishing colonies, believing they were alone in the vastness of space. That comforting delusion had just shattered. The transmission came through on every frequency simultaneously. The face that appeared was not human. It had too many eyes, skin that shifted between blue and purple, and a mouth that moved in ways that made Ji-won's stomach turn. But the translation was perfect, the words clear and cold. "Greetings, species of Earth. I am Ambassador Velraxis of the Galactic Council. We speak for 847 civilized species across this galaxy. Your recent expansion into space has been noted and evaluated. You have entered zones protected by Council law. You have built colonies without authorization. You have developed weapons without oversight. This cannot continue." Ji-won felt her hand tighten on the coffee cup. The ambassador continued, its voice carrying the tone of a teacher scolding a child. "The Council exists to maintain order and peace. All species must submit to this order for the greater good. You will deactivate all military vessels. You will provide full access to your technology and resources. You will accept Council oversight of your government and expansion. You have 72 hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in corrective measures. This is not a negotiation. This is how civilization functions." The transmission ended. The massive ship simply hung there in space, waiting. Ji-won set down her coffee carefully, then opened a direct line to Earth's surface. "Get me President Park, now." 6 hours later, Ji-won stood in a secure conference room beneath the presidential complex in Geneva. The room was crowded with the most powerful people on Earth. President Park Min-ho sat at the head of the table, his face calm, his eyes sharp. Admiral Kan Soo-ho, commander of Earth's entire military fleet, studied a holographic display of the alien ship with the intensity of a predator sizing up prey. "Options?" Park said simply. Admiral Kang spoke first. "We have 212 warships currently operational. Another 90 in various stages of construction. The alien vessel alone masses more than our entire fleet combined. We have no data on their weapons, their shields, their true capabilities. In a straight fight, we lose, so we surrender?" asked Defense Minister Wang, his voice tight with anger. "I didn't say that," Kang replied. He gestured at the hologram, and it shifted to show Earth's defensive positions. "We have advantages they may not expect. Our FTL drives work differently than anything the Council likely uses. We develop jump technology independently, based on different physics principles. We can enter and exit faster than light speeds in seconds. If their technology follows conventional patterns, they'll need minutes to calculate safe jump coordinates." A younger woman stood up. Han Gina was only 29, but she had risen quickly through the intelligence services due to her ability to see patterns others missed. "Mr. President, I've been analyzing historical data we've gathered from our colonies. We found debris, abandoned stations, traces of other species. None recent. All of them showed signs of advanced technology, but then, nothing. They vanished. What are you suggesting?" Park asked. Ji pulled up images on the main screen. "I think the Council has done this before. Many times. They arrive, they demand surrender, and species comply because the Council seems overwhelming. But then those species disappear from the historical record. I think the Council doesn't just want oversight. I think they want absorption, complete integration, and eventually erasure. The room fell silent. Finally, Park spoke. If we surrender, we lose our freedom. If we fight, we might lose everything. But at least we'll lose it on our own terms. He looked around the table. I need to know if we can actually hurt them. Not win, not yet. Just make them bleed. Admiral? Kang smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We have some surprises. We've been working on weapon systems that violate several treaties we signed with ourselves because they seem too dangerous. I think it's time to unsign those treaties. Give me the 72 hours they've given us, and I'll give you a fleet that can make the Council regret coming here. Park nodded slowly. Do it, but we also need to try diplomacy. Yunhoun, I want you to open communications with them. Be respectful, be professional, but make it clear we will not simply roll over. Yunhoun, the senior diplomat, looked troubled. Mr. President, their message was clear. They don't see this as a negotiation. Then we'll teach them otherwise, Park said firmly. Over the next 72 hours, Earth transformed. Every shipyard went to emergency production. Civilian vessels were retrofitted with weapons. Experimental systems that had been in testing for years were rushed into service. Captain Lee Jung-won took command of a new warship called Defiance, equipped with weapons so new they had barely been tested. The ship's chief engineer, Choi Dain, showed her the crown jewel of human innovation. We call it the blink drive, he said, running his hand along a massive reactor core. Standard FTL jumps take time to calculate because you need to map gravitational fields, avoid obstacles, plot safe routes. Our drive doesn't care. It rips a hole in space and drags us through. It's violent, it's dangerous, and it's fast. We can jump in 3 seconds. That's our edge. Meanwhile, Yunhoun tried everything to establish meaningful dialogue with the Council. Every attempt was met with the same response: compliance or correction. No middle ground. No discussion. Just the certainty that the Council was right and Earth was wrong. On the final day, President Park addressed humanity. Billions watched as he stood before cameras, his expression resolute. We have been given a choice between freedom and survival. Some would say survival must come first. But I say survival without freedom is not life. It is merely existence. The Council expects us to surrender. They believe we have no choice. They are wrong. The deadline passed. The Council ship remained in orbit, silent and waiting. Then Admiral Kang transmitted a single message on all frequencies, directed at the alien vessel. We refuse. Come and take it. Space around Earth began to fill with human warships. They were smaller, weaker, outnumbered by vessels they could not even see yet. But they were there, weapons armed, crews ready. Captain Ji-won stood on the bridge of Defiance, watching the crew prepare for battle. A young ensign, barely 20 years old, looked at her with fear in his eyes. Captain, can we actually win? Ji-won considered lying, then decided these people deserve truth. I don't know, but we're going to make them remember us. She sat in her command chair and opened fleet-wide communications. All ships, this is Commodore Lee. Weapons free. Show them what humans do when someone tries to take our freedom. The Council had expected surrender. Instead, they got war. The station Primacy orbited a neutron star, drawing power from its immense gravitational field. It had been the seat of Council power for 4,000 years, a monument to order and civilization. Inside its massive command center, Military Coordinator Dexuan reviewed the Earth situation with the calm confidence of someone who had seen this scene play out dozens of times before. Dexuan was old by any species standards. Its crystalline body refracted light in complex patterns, each flash a word in its native language. To the assembled council members, it communicated through translation devices that rendered its thoughts into hundreds of languages simultaneously. The humans have refused, Dexulan stated, its crystalline form pulsing with what might have been amusement. As expected, minor aggression species always posture before submission. It is part of their psychological makeup. They need to feel they resisted before they accept the inevitable. Ambassador Velraxis shifted uncomfortably in its specialized seat. They seemed more defiant than usual. Their leader, this park, spoke of freedom as if it were more important than survival. They all say such things, Dexulan replied. Let me show you. The coordinator activated a holographic display that filled the center of the command chamber. Images appeared, one after another. Different species, different worlds, but the same pattern. The Keltharians spoke of honor. The Dreviks spoke of independence. The Yalani spoke of their ancient rights. They all spoke beautifully. They all surrendered. The coordinator pulled up battle simulations, complex mathematical models that predicted every possible outcome of conflict with Earth. Human technology is primitive. They have had faster-than-light travel for only 15 years. We have possessed it for millennia. Their ships are small, their weapons crude, their tactics non-existent. Our models give them 6 hours of resistance before collapse. Perhaps 8 if they are particularly stubborn. Another council member, Kursev, leaned forward. Its insectoid body clicked and hummed. What if they have hidden capabilities? Secret weapons? Dexulan's crystalline body flashed in a pattern that translated to laughter. In 15 years? Impossible. Weapons development takes centuries of refinement. They are children playing with fire, unaware that we have mastered fusion stars. No, the humans will fight, and they will lose. And then they will beg for the mercy of integration. What Dexulan did not know, could not know, was that humanity had developed its technology along a completely different path. While council species had refined the same basic FTL principles for thousands of years, making them safer and more efficient, humans had stumbled onto something else entirely. Something faster, more dangerous, and utterly unpredictable. On Earth, Engineer Choi Doyen stood in a secure laboratory, explaining this to Admiral Kang. The Council's technology is like a highway, he said, gesturing at a holographic model. Beautiful, efficient, safe. They calculate the perfect route, enter FTL along established paths, and emerge exactly where they planned. It takes time, but it's reliable. He shifted the display to show human FTL technology. Ours is like smashing through a wall. We don't calculate paths. We don't follow rules. We tear a hole in reality and jump through it. It's violent. It damages our ships over time, and sometimes we emerge a few thousand kilometers off target. But we do it in 3 seconds instead of 3 minutes. Admiral Kang studied the display. They'll expect us to fight like they do. Careful, calculated, following the rules of engagement they've developed over millennia. Yes, Diane agreed. Which means when we break every rule they know, they won't be ready for it. Back on Primacy, Dexulan assembled the enforcement fleet. 400 warships, drawn from a dozen council species, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. The smallest was twice the size of Earth's largest warship. The flagship, Eternal Judgment, was a mobile fortress that could destroy a city from orbit with a single shot. The coordinator addressed the fleet commanders with absolute certainty. You will jump to the human home system. You will position yourselves in a standard dominance formation. The humans will see the futility of resistance and surrender. If they do not, you will disable their orbital defenses without destroying them. We need their infrastructure intact for integration. Casualties should be minimal. This is a police action, not a war. The fleet jumped, vanishing from primacy space in carefully calculated waves. Each ship entered FTL along approved routes, their navigation systems plotting safe paths through the complex gravitational fields between stars. It would take them 6 hours to reach Earth, time enough for the humans to see them coming and understand their doom. On Earth, Captain Lee Ji-won watched the approaching fleet on long-range sensors. The Defiance hung in space near Mars, part of a defensive line that looked pathetically thin compared to what was coming. She opened a channel to Admiral Kang. "Sir, they're coming in formation." Perfect formation. They're not even trying to hide their approach. Kang's voice came back calm and measured. Why would they? In every conflict they've ever fought, overwhelming force was enough. They're used to species that see their fleet and give up. They don't know how to fight enemies who refuse to acknowledge they're beaten. Ji-won looked at her tactical display. Her ship, Defiance, was surrounded by 40 other human vessels. Against 400 council ships, it was suicide. But the plan didn't call for meeting them head-on. "All ships," she transmitted, "stay loose. Stay mobile. Don't bunch up. When they arrive, let them think they've won." She paused, then added, "Until we show them they haven't." The Council fleet emerged from FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system, their ships spreading out in a formation that had conquered 100 worlds. It was beautiful in its precision, each vessel exactly where it should be, weapons armed but not firing. A demonstration of overwhelming power meant to break enemy morale without a shot fired. Dexulan watched from the flagship, its crystalline body pulsing with satisfaction. The human ships were scattered, disorganized, clearly unprepared. Exactly as predicted. "Open communications," the coordinator commanded. "Offer them one final chance to surrender." The transmission went out, Dexulan's words translated into human languages. "People of Earth, you see now the futility of resistance. Power down your weapons. Deactivate your ships. Accept integration. This is your final opportunity for a peaceful transition." On the Defiance, Ji-won listened to the message. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders. She thought about everything they were about to do, all the rules they were about to break, all the insane risks they were about to take. Then she smiled. "Tactical," she said calmly. "Target the flagship. Weapons free. All ships, execute Plan Chaos." What happened next was something the Council had never experienced in 4,000 years of expansion. The human ships didn't power down. They didn't retreat. They didn't even try to fight according to recognizable tactics. Instead, they simply vanished. 40 human ships activated their blink drives simultaneously and jumped to FTL, not away from the battle, but directly into it. They appeared scattered throughout the Council formation, some within a few hundred meters of Council vessels, completely ignoring every safety protocol that governed space combat. And then they opened fire. Dexulan's moment of certainty shattered as alarms screamed throughout the Eternal Judgment. A human ship had appeared directly above them, so close that shields were useless. Missiles streaked down, slamming into the flagship's dorsal hull. Explosions blossomed across the massive vessel's surface. Impossible! Dexulan's crystalline body flashed in colors that translated to shock and rage. They jumped directly into close combat. Their calculations should have taken minutes. How? No one had an answer. And across the battlefield, the Council's perfect formation descended into chaos as human ships blinked in and out of FTL, striking and vanishing before return fire could be coordinated. The war the Council had expected to last 6 hours had just begun, and nothing was going according to plan. The battle for Earth's solar system turned into a nightmare the Council forces had never imagined possible. Their perfect formation, designed to intimidate and dominate, became a liability as human ships materialized in the spaces between their vessels, firing at point-blank range before vanishing back into FTL. Captain Lee Ji-won stood on the bridge of the Defiance, gripping her command chair as the ship shuddered from weapon impacts. "Blink in 3 seconds," she called out. "Target coordinates set for their rear formation. Fire the moment we emerge." The ship lurched as reality tore around them. The view screen went black, then exploded back into normal space. They were behind a massive council cruiser, its shields facing the wrong direction. Defiance's missiles launched, crossing the tiny distance in less than a second. The explosions tore through the cruiser's engine section, sending it spiraling out of control. "Blink again," Ji-won ordered. "Don't give them time to target us." Across the battlefield, the same scene repeated hundreds of times. Human ships would appear, strike, and disappear. The Council forces tried to adapt, spreading their formation wider, but that just gave humans more gaps to exploit. They tried clustering together for mutual defense, but that made them easier targets when human ships jumped directly into the middle of their groups, aboard the Eternal Judgment. Dexulan watched its careful battle plan disintegrate. The coordinator's crystalline body flashed in rapid, angry patterns. "This is not warfare. This is chaos. They have no strategy, no formation, no discipline." The tactical officer, a being that resembled a floating jellyfish, pulsed with distress. "Coordinator, they have destroyed or disabled 47 of our vessels. We have only managed to damage 12 of theirs. Their mobility is beyond our ability to track." "Then stop trying to track them," Dexulan commanded. "Blanket the area with fire. Saturate every possible jump coordinate with weapons." The Council ships began firing in all directions, creating a web of energy beams and missiles that filled space with deadly light. For a moment, it seemed to work. 2 human ships emerged from FTL directly into the wall of fire and were torn apart instantly. But the rest adapted, jumping in from different angles, different distances, never staying still long enough to be targeted effectively. Commander Nam Ji-yoon commanded the destroyer Relentless, and she saw an opportunity in the Council's desperation. They were firing blindly, burning through ammunition at an unsustainable rate. More importantly, they had pulled their defensive formations tighter, clustering around the flagship. She opened a channel to Admiral Kang. "Sir, I can draw their fire. If I make a run straight at their flagship, they'll focus everything on me." "That's your window." Kang's voice came back immediately. "Negative, Commander. That's suicide. Only if I'm still there when they fire," Ji-yoon replied. She had already made her decision. "Relentless out." She cut the channel before the Admiral could argue further. "All hands, this is the Commander. Strap in. We're making a run." The Relentless turned and accelerated directly toward the Eternal Judgment, its engines burning at maximum power. Every Council ship in range locked onto it, their targeting systems screaming with priority alerts. Here, finally, was an enemy behaving predictably, following a recognizable attack pattern. Dexulan saw the destroyer coming. "All weapons, target that ship. Destroy it." Hundreds of weapons opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and missiles converged on the Relentless from every direction. It looked like certain death, but at the last possible moment, just as the weapon's fire reached maximum concentration, Ji-yoon gave the order. "Blink now." The Relentless vanished. The Council's weapons fire, meant for a single target, instead slammed into each other. Ships on opposite sides of the formation had fired at the same target, and when that target disappeared, their weapons hit their own allies. Explosions rippled through the Council fleet as friendly fire tore into shields and hulls. In that moment of chaos, while Council ships tried to sort out who had shot whom, 3 human ships appeared at coordinates that engineer Choi Do-yeon had calculated with suicidal precision. They emerged from FTL already inside the Council formation. And they weren't carrying conventional weapons. Scientist Osora had spent the last decade working on theoretical weapons that most people called impossible. Now, as the 3 ships activated their experimental gravity well generators, the impossible became horrifyingly real. Space itself began to distort around the Council ships. Their sensors went wild as artificial gravitational fields, thousands of times stronger than Earth's gravity, appeared from nowhere. Council vessels, designed to withstand weapons fire and radiation, had no defense against gravity itself. Hulls began to crumple like paper. Exulan watched in horror as 15 Council ships simply compressed, their hulls folding in on themselves under impossible gravitational stress. What weapon is this? How are they doing this? No one had answers. The Council had rules about weapons development. Certain technologies were forbidden because they were too dangerous, too unpredictable. Apparently, humans had no such restrictions. The coordinator made a decision that it had never expected to make. All ships, retreat. Fall back to Rally Point Beta. We need to regroup and reassess. The order went out, but retreating was not simple. Council ships needed time to calculate safe FTL jumps, minutes that the human forces used to devastating effect. As Council vessels powered up their FTL drives, human ships appeared among them, firing at vulnerable engines and jump drives. More Council ships were destroyed or disabled, even as they tried to flee. Intelligence Officer Han Jina had spent the battle aboard the command station Sentinel Prime, coordinating the chaos. She had cracked the Council's communication protocols, something the Council would have considered impossible given their encryption was thousands of years more advanced than human technology. But Gina had noticed that the Council relied too much on their technology's complexity to protect them. They had patterns, repeating sequences, and Gina was very good at finding patterns. "Admiral," she reported to Kong, "the Council flagship is preparing to jump. Their calculations show they're heading to coordinates outside the solar system. If we let them escape, they'll regroup and come back stronger." Kang studied the tactical display. His forces were exhausted, ammunition running low, several ships so damaged they were barely holding together. But the flagship was vulnerable right now, its shields weakened, its crew in disarray. "Captain Lee, can you get one more jump out of Defiance?" Ji-won checked with her engineering crew. Choi Do-yeon's face appeared on her screen, covered in sweat and what looked like blood from a cut on his forehead. "The blink drive is overheating. One more jump, maybe 2. After that, we risk tearing the ship apart." Ji-won made the decision instantly. "We're taking it. One more jump, right next to their flagship. We're gonna make them remember this day." Defiance blinked out of normal space one final time. When it reappeared, it was less than a kilometer from the Eternal Judgment's bridge section. At that range, even human weapons could penetrate Council shields. Defiance fired everything it had. Missiles, energy weapons, even the experimental gravity mines that, Sora had installed just hours before the battle. The Eternal Judgment shuddered under the onslaught. Its bridge shields collapsed. One missile penetrated deep into the command center, exploding 30 meters from where Exulan stood. The blast threw the coordinator across the room, its crystalline body cracking from the impact dot as alarms screamed and fire spread. The coordinator gave its final order. "Jump. Now. Anywhere. Just get us out of here." The flagship vanished into FTL, its calculations rushed and imprecise. Half the Council fleet managed to follow. The other half was left behind, damaged and scattered, surrounded by human ships. They surrendered within the hour. When the battle ended, Captain Lee Ji-won stood on Defiance's damaged bridge and looked at the casualty reports. Earth had lost 42 ships out of the 105 that had fought. Nearly 30,000 crew members were dead. The solar system was filled with debris and floating bodies, but the Council fleet had lost over 200 ships. Their perfect formation was broken. Their certainty was shattered. And for the first time in 4,000 years, they had retreated from a battle they had expected to win easily. Admiral Kang's face appeared on G1's screen. The old admiral looked exhausted, but there was a grim satisfaction in his eyes. All ships, stand down from combat status. Begin search and rescue operations. And somebody get me a channel to Earth. President Park needs to know we're still here. On Primacy Station, displaced in a medical chamber as its crystalline body was repaired. The coordinator's last conscious thought before sedation was one it had never expected to have. The humans were dangerous. More dangerous than any species the Council had ever encountered. This war was not over. It had barely begun. 3 months after the Battle of Seoul, Earth had transformed into something it had never been before. Every major city now had factories working around the clock, producing warships, weapons, and ammunition. Children went to school past recruitment posters. The night sky glowed with the light of orbital construction, yards building humanity's response to the Council's inevitable counterattack. Admiral Kang. Suho stood before the United Earth Assembly, a gathering of representatives from every nation and colony. The chamber was packed, and every eye was on him as he presented what many were calling either humanity's boldest plan or its final mistake. "The Council expects us to defend," Kang said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "They expect us to build up our forces, fortify our positions, and wait for them to return with overwhelming numbers. This is what every species they have ever faced has done. This is why those species are now extinct or enslaved." He activated a holographic star map that filled the center of the chamber. Red markers indicated Council military installations, supply depots, and staging areas. "I propose we do the opposite. We take the war to them. Hit their logistics, destroy their shipyards, make them defend their own territory instead of attacking ours. Force them to fight on 100 fronts instead of one." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some representatives called it suicide. Others called it the only way to survive. President Park let the debate run for several minutes before calling for order. "Admiral, what are our chances with this plan?" Kang was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, Mr. President, I don't know. But I do know our chances if we sit here and wait for them to come back with 10 times the forces they brought before. That's not a battle. That's an execution." The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity would take the offensive. Captain Lee Ji-won, now promoted to Commodore, received command of the First Strike Fleet, 40 ships, all equipped with the latest refinements to the blink drive technology. Engineer Choi Do-in had spent 3 months solving the overheating problems, making the drives faster and more reliable. They still violated every known safety protocol, but now they violated them more efficiently. The first target was a Council shipyard in the Kaur system, 200 light-years from Earth. Intelligence Officer Han Jina had identified it as a major construction facility, responsible for building nearly a quarter of the Council's military vessels. It was defended by only 30 ships, because the Council had never needed to defend their interior positions before. Ji-won's fleet jumped into the system in a scattered formation, appearing at multiple points simultaneously. The defending Council forces tried to respond, but they were organized for patrol duty, not combat against an enemy willing to use FTL jumps as a tactical weapon. "All ships, target the construction yards first," Ji-won ordered. "Ignore the defending ships unless they're directly threatening you. We're here to break their ability to build more vessels, not get into a slugging match." The human ships streaked toward the massive orbital construction facilities, dodging defensive fire from automated weapon systems. Pilot Beak Minjay led a squadron of small fighters that had been specifically designed for this kind of mission. They were tiny, fast, and carried enough explosives to cripple ships 100 times their size. Minjay's fighter screamed through space, defensive lasers tracking him but always a fraction of a second too slow. He could see the main construction yard ahead, a massive ring-shaped structure where 3 Council cruisers were in various stages of assembly. "Squadron, arm your payloads. We're going in." His squadron dove toward the construction ring, fighters spreading out to hit different sections. Minjay selected the nearly complete cruiser in Bay 2, locked his targeting system, and fired. His missiles crossed the distance in seconds, slamming into the cruiser's exposed internal structure. The vessel, still lacking shields and armor, tore apart from the inside around him. The rest of the squadron did the same. Within minutes, the entire construction facility was an expanding cloud of debris. Billions of credits worth of infrastructure and half-built ships gone. "Pull out." G1 ordered as Council reinforcements began jumping into the system. "We've done what we came for." Blink coordinates already transmitted. Jump in 30 seconds. The human fleet vanished just as Council warships arrived. The defenders were left with nothing but wreckage and the humiliating knowledge that humans had struck deep into Council territory and escaped without significant losses. It was the first of many such raids. Over the following weeks, human strike forces hit targets across Council space. Supply depots disappeared in nuclear fire. Communications relays went dark. Patrol routes became death traps as human ships would appear, destroy Council vessels, and vanish before help could arrive. The Council had never fought this kind of war. Their entire military doctrine was built around direct confrontation, overwhelming force, and the certainty that enemies would stand and fight in predictable ways. Humans did none of these things. They hit and ran. They ignored rules of engagement. They took risks that Council commanders considered insane. Back on primacy, the Council convened in emergency session. Daxulan had been removed from command, being too shaken by its defeated soul. The new military coordinator was Karsev, the insectoid being who had questioned humanity's capabilities before the first battle. Kursev had learned from Daxulan's mistakes. It would not underestimate humans again. The raids must stop. Kursev clicked and hummed to the assembled Council. "We are losing ships, facilities, and credibility. Member species are beginning to question our strength. Some are even asking if they should negotiate with the humans separately." "Then we escalate," said one Council member, a being that resembled a floating collection of lights. "Use the forbidden weapons, the ones we reserve for extinction-level threats." Kursev's insectoid body rattled with what might have been uncertainty or anger. "You speak of the stellar converters, weapons that can ignite a planet's atmosphere and burn all life from its surface. We have not used those in 3,000 years. These are not normal enemies," the light being replied. "They must be made to understand the price of defiance. Destroy one of their colonies. Show them what happens when species refuse integration." Meanwhile, on Earth, diplomat Yunhan was working on a different kind of warfare. She had been quietly making contact with species that the Council had integrated over the centuries. What she discovered was shocking. Many of these species had not joined the Council willingly. They had been conquered, their histories rewritten, their cultures slowly erased. "We can use this," Hound reported to President Park. "The Council maintains order through fear and the illusion of inevitability. If we can prove that resistance is possible, the humans can fight back and survive, some of these species might join us." Park nodded slowly. "How many species are we talking about?" "At least 30 that I've made contact with. Maybe more if word spreads. But there's a problem. If they rebel openly, the Council will crush them. They need to see that we can actually win, not just survive. That night, Park met with Admiral Kang and Commodore Jiwan. We need a major victory. Something that can't be explained away as raiders getting lucky. We need to prove we can stand toe-to-toe with the Council's main forces and win. Kang pulled up intelligence reports. We've located their primary fleet staging area. They're gathering forces there for what looks like a major assault on Earth. Over 600 ships, all preparing to jump to our system. 600, Jiwan breathed. We have maybe 200 operational ships total, which is why we hit them before they're ready, Kang said. While they're still organizing, still loading supplies, still thinking they're safe in their own territory. It was perhaps the most dangerous plan humanity had ever attempted. Take their entire fleet, jump deep into Council space, and attack an enemy force 3 times their size. But if they could destroy or scatter that fleet, they would buy Earth crucial time and prove to the galaxy that humans were not just desperate raiders, but a legitimate military power. The decision was made. In 2 weeks, Earth's entire military fleet would jump to the Council staging area and either win an impossible victory or die trying. On his final night before the mission, pilot Beak Minjae sat in his fighter bay, writing a letter to his family. He was 27 years old, had been flying for 5 years, and had survived 12 combat missions. The odds said his luck was running out. If you're reading this, I didn't make it back, he wrote. I want you to know that I was scared. I'm scared right now, writing this. But I'm also proud. Proud to be doing something that matters. The Council thinks we should surrender, should give up our freedom because they're bigger and stronger. But being human means choosing to stand, even when standing is hard. I hope we win. But even if we don't, I hope they remember that we fought. He sealed the letter, placed it in his locker, and went to prepare his fighter for the most important battle humanity had ever faced. On primacy, Khrushchev received the report that the stellar converter weapon was ready. The massive device, capable of igniting an entire planet's atmosphere, was being loaded onto a heavily defended transport. In 2 weeks, it would jump to human space and end this war with one terrible demonstration of Council power. 2 forces were converging toward a confrontation that would decide not just the war, but President Park Min-o stood before the cameras for what he knew might be his final address to humanity. Every screen on Earth, every monitor in the colonies, every communication device on human ships across space showed his face. Behind him, through the window of his office, construction yards filled the sky with the light of welding torches and engine tests. In 2 days, our entire fleet will engage the Council's forces in the Arcturus sector, Park said, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was announcing. We will be outnumbered 3-1. The Council is also transporting a weapon to our system, something they call a stellar converter. Our intelligence tells us this weapon can burn the atmosphere off a planet. They plan to use it on Earth. He paused, letting that sink in. Across the planet, people stopped what they were doing to listen. In homes, in factories, in schools, everyone understood what was being said. This was the moment of truth. Some people have asked me if we should negotiate, if we should find some middle ground with the Council. I have tried. Diplomat Yoon Houn has tried. We have offered every compromise we could imagine. The Council's response has been the same each time: complete surrender or complete destruction. No middle ground. No negotiation. Just obedience or death. Park leaned forward, his eyes intense. I will not surrender humanity's freedom. I will not condemn our children to live as servants in someone else's empire. If we must fight, we will fight. If we must die, we will die free. But we will make them remember us. We will make the entire galaxy remember that when humanity was told to kneel, we chose to stand. The broadcast ended. Across human space, people returned to their work with renewed determination. In the shipyards, crews worked faster. In the training centers, recruits pushed harder. Everyone understood what was at stake. Commodore Li Ji-wan stood on the bridge of her flagship, now called Defiant Hope, watching the fleet assemble. 212 ships, representing every vessel Earth could put into space. Some were military warships, purpose-built for combat. Others were converted civilian vessels, freighters and transports that had been hastily armed with whatever weapons could be fitted to their hulls. Engineer Choi Diane appeared on her screen, his face gaunt from months of endless work. Commodore, the final drive upgrades are complete. Every ship in the fleet can now execute emergency jumps in under 2 seconds. I've also implemented the new protocol for synchronized jumping. If we need to, the entire fleet can blink simultaneously to the same coordinates. What are the risks? Ji-wan asked. Doyeon smiled grimly. At these power levels, with this many ships jumping at once, there's a 15% chance of catastrophic drive failure per jump. Ships could tear themselves apart, or emerge in the wrong location, or not emerge at all. And if we don't use it, then we die conventionally instead of spectacularly. Your choice, Commodore. The fleet jumped to the Arcturus sector in waves, emerging at the coordinates intelligence officer Han Jina had identified as the Council staging area. What they found was terrifying. 600 Council warships orbited a gas giant, organized in defensive formations around a massive vessel that could only be the stellar converter transport. Admiral Kang's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships, this is the Admiral. You see what we're facing. The Council expects us to turn back, to realize this is suicide and retreat. They're wrong. Today, we show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. All ships, execute attack pattern Delta. Make every shot count. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each targeting different sections of the Council formation. Ji-wan's group, 30 ships strong, went straight for the stellar converter transport. The massive vessel was surrounded by 50 Council warships, all with shields at maximum and weapons tracking the approaching human forces. This is it, Ji-wan said to her crew. Everything we've trained for. Everything we've fought for. It comes down to the next hour. Now, prepare for combat blink. Weapons, I want all missile tubes loaded and ready. Engineering, give me everything the drives can handle. The battle began with humanity's standard tactic. Blink in, fire, blink out. But the Council had adapted. They had studied human tactics, developed counter-strategies. When human ships blinked into close range, they found Council vessels already moving, shields angled to deflect the attacks. The Council had learned, but so had humanity. Pilot Beak Min-jae led his fighter squadron in a maneuver that was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. Instead of attacking the Council ships directly, his fighters went after their sensor arrays and communication systems. Small, precise strikes that blinded and deafened the enemy vessels, making their coordination impossible. Squadron, target their sensor clusters, Min-jae ordered, his fighter diving between 2 massive Council cruisers. Enemy point defense weapons tracked him, filling space with deadly fire. But his small craft was designed for exactly this kind of suicide run. He fired, his missiles taking out a sensor array the size of a building, then banked hard to avoid return fire. Behind him, one of his pilots wasn't as lucky. The young woman's fighter was caught by a Council particle beam and simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant. Min-jae felt the loss like a physical blow, but he couldn't stop. The mission was all that mattered. On the Defiant Hope, scientist Oh Sora activated her latest weapon, an improvement on the gravity well generators that had been so effective in the first battle. This version was more powerful, more focused, and absolutely horrifying in its effects. Space warped around 3 Council cruisers, and their hulls began to compress. But this time, the Council was ready. They had developed shield modifications that could resist gravitational manipulation, at least partially. The ships survived, though severely damaged. They adapted, Osora reported to Jiwan. The gravity weapons are less effective than before. Then we adapt too, Jiwan replied. She opened a channel to Choi Doyun. How many emergency jumps can we execute before drive failure becomes critical? Maybe 5, the engineer replied. 6 if we're lucky. Prepare for synchronized jump. Entire fleet, directly into the middle of their formation around the stellar converter. We're going to ram that thing. It was the most desperate move in a battle full of desperate moves. Every human ship would jump simultaneously to the same general coordinates, appearing in a tight cluster right next to the weapon transport. Some ships would collide with each other. Some would emerge too close to Council vessels and be destroyed instantly. But if even a handful of ships survived the jump, they would be close enough to the stellar converter to destroy it with conventional weapons. Admiral Kang heard the plan and approved it immediately. All ships, this is the Admiral. Prepare for synchronized emergency jump on Commodore Lee's mark. It's been an honor serving with you all. Across the fleet, crews braced themselves. Some prayed. Some checked their weapons one last time. Some simply held on to their duty stations and waited. And then Jiwan gave the order. Jump, now. 212 ships blinked out of normal space simultaneously. The coordinated gravitational distortions created a ripple effect that was visible across the entire star system. And then they emerged, appearing in a chaotic cluster directly next to the stellar converter transport. 17 ships collided with each other or with Council vessels. Their crews dead before they even knew what had happened. 23 more emerged with catastrophic drive failures, their reactors overloading or their hulls torn apart by the stressed jump. But the rest survived those first critical seconds, and they were exactly where they needed to be. Beak Minjae saw his opportunity. The stellar converter transport was huge, but it was also relatively undefended at close range. Its defensive weapons were designed to hit targets at a distance, not fighters that were practically touching its hull. He armed his fighter's entire payload, set a collision course, and opened a final transmission. All squadrons, this is Minjae. I'm going in. Make it count. He didn't give anyone time to argue or order him to stop. His fighter accelerated, its engines burning at maximum power. Council point defense fire filled space around him, but he was too close, moving too fast. His fighter slammed into the stellar converter's primary reactor, and the antimatter warheads he carried detonated on impact. The explosion was like a miniature star being born. The stellar converter, a weapon that could have destroyed Earth, tore itself apart. The transport carrying it broke in half, both sections tumbling away from the fireball. Beak Minjae's sacrifice had just saved billions of lives, but the battle was far from over. The Council forces, enraged by the destruction of their superweapon, pressed their attack with renewed fury. Human ships were dying, their numbers dropping steadily. Jiwan watched her tactical display as friendly icons winked out one after another. And then something unexpected happened. Council ships began reporting strange readings. Their communication networks, which Han Jina had been quietly infiltrating for months, suddenly lit up with transmissions that weren't from Council forces. Voices speaking in languages the Council thought had been forgotten. Languages of species that had been integrated centuries ago. Diplomat Yoon Hyun's gambit was paying off. 3 subjugated species, seeing humanity's desperate stand, chose that Mo